The sun had long set over Blackwater Cove, a sleepy coastal town nestled between jagged cliffs and an endless expanse of dark, churning waters. The air was thick with salt and something else, something unspoken, almost palpable. Locals whispered about the curse that had plagued the town for centuries but never dared to speak its name aloud. Tourists rarely ventured here, and those who did often left quickly, their faces pale, their eyes haunted by things they couldn't explain. It all began when Emma Carter arrived in Blackwater Cove. She wasn't your typical tourist. She was a journalist chasing shadows, hoping to uncover the truth behind the town's eerie reputation. Her editor had dismissed her fascination as morbid curiosity, but Emma knew better. There were too many unanswered questions, too many disappearances, too many strange occurrences ignored by authorities. Something sinister lurked beneath the surface of this quiet little town, and she was determined to find out what it was. Emma checked into the only inn in town, a creaky old building called the Seagull's Rest. It smelled faintly of mildew, and every step on the wooden staircase groaned like a dying animal. The innkeeper, Mrs. Hargrove, greeted her with a tight-lipped smile and handed her a key without saying much. "Room 6, she muttered before retreating behind the counter, where she busied herself polishing glasses that didn't need cleaning. That night, as Emma unpacked her belongings, she noticed something odd about the room. The wallpaper was peeling away from one corner near the window, revealing faded writing scrawled directly onto the wall. Squinting, she leaned closer to read it. "They come at midnight. Don't look at the water." Her heart raced. Was this some prank? Or perhaps the ramblings of a previous guest? Still, there was something chilling about the urgency in the words. Unable to shake the feeling, Emma decided to explore the town under the cover of darkness. If anyone could shed light on the mystery, it would be the locals. Not the ones hiding behind polite smiles during the day, but the ones who lingered in dimly lit bars and alleys after sunset. The tavern, known simply as The Anchor, was the kind of place where secrets festered. Smoke hung heavy in the air, mingling with the smell of stale beer and fried fish. Patrons sat hunched over their drinks, speaking in hushed tones or not at all. Emma took a seat at the bar and ordered a whiskey, pretending to sip it while scanning the room. A man sitting 2 stools down caught her attention. His face was weather-worn, his hands calloused, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen far too much. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and gravelly. "You're new around here." "I'm just passing through," Emma replied cautiously. "Doing some research." He chuckled bitterly. "Research, huh? You won't find anything worth writing about unless you dig deep enough to get yourself killed." "What do you mean?" she pressed. Instead of answering, he slid a folded piece of paper across the bar. "If you really want answers, go to the lighthouse tonight. But don't say I didn't warn you." Before she could ask more, he stood up and disappeared into the crowd, leaving her alone with the cryptic note. Unfolding it, she found a single sentence written in shaky handwriting. "The truth lies beneath the waves." Against her better judgment, Emma made her way to the lighthouse later that night. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the rocky shoreline. Waves crashed violently against the cliffs, their rhythm almost hypnotic. As she approached the towering structure, she felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't just the cold, it was something deeper, primal. Inside, the air was damp and musty. Spiral staircase led upward, each step creaking ominously beneath her weight. At the top, she found a small room with a desk cluttered with papers and maps. One map in particular caught her eye. It depicted the coastline surrounding Blackwater Cove, with several X's marked offshore. Beneath the map was a journal, its pages yellowed with age. Flipping through it, Emma realized it belonged to someone named Samuel Grayson, the former lighthouse keeper who had vanished decades ago. The entries grew increasingly frantic as she read, March 14th, 1957. "They're watching me again. I can feel their eyes from the water. I should have listened to the warnings." April 2nd, 1957. "I saw them last night, dark shapes moving beneath the waves. They came ashore, dragging something or someone with them. God help us all." April 10th, 1957. "It's too late. They know I've seen them. If anyone finds this, Tell them to stay away from the water. Whatever you do, don't look." The final entry ended abruptly. The ink smeared as if Grayson had been interrupted mid-sentence. Emma's hands trembled as she closed the journal. What had he seen? And why did everyone keep warning her about the water? As she descended the staircase, a sound stopped her dead in her tracks. A faint whisper, barely audible over the roar of the ocean. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around her like a physical presence. The voice was soft, almost melodic, yet filled with malice. "Join us!" She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned toward the source of the sound, her gaze drawn inexorably to the lighthouse window, and beyond it, to the black, restless sea. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer, peering into the depths. At first, she saw nothing but the reflection of the moon rippling across the surface, then movement, shapes, shadows twisting and writhing beneath the waves. Her stomach churned as realization dawned. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't human. Their forms shifted constantly, impossible to focus on, as though reality itself rejected them. And then, one of them rose closer to the surface, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. Emma stumbled back, clutching her chest. She had to get out of there. But as she reached the door, she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate, echoing off the walls. Spinning around, she found herself face to face with Mrs. Hargrove, the innkeeper. Only now the woman's expression was completely different. Her lips curled into a grotesque smile, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "You shouldn't have come here," Mrs. Hargrove hissed, her voice layered with others, as if multiple entities spoke through her. "Now you'll join the rest." Emma bolted, her legs carrying her faster than she thought possible. She ran blindly through the forest, branches clawing at her skin, until she reached the edge of the cliff overlooking the ocean. Behind her, the whispers grew louder, converging into a deafening chorus. She glanced over her shoulder and saw them, the shadowy figures emerging from the trees, their forms fluid and unnatural. There was nowhere left to run, or so she thought. Just as the first figure lunged for her, Emma spotted a narrow path leading down to the beach. Summoning the last of her strength, she scrambled down the rocky slope, her feet slipping on loose stones. Reaching the shore, she spotted a rowboat tied to a post. Without hesitation, she untied it and pushed off into the water. The whispers followed her, growing angrier, more insistent. But as she rowed further from shore, they began to fade, replaced by an oppressive silence. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope she might escape. Then something grabbed the bottom of the boat. Emma screamed as the vessel rocked violently, nearly capsizing. Peering over the side, she saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at her from the depths. More shapes surrounded the boat, pulling it downward inch by inch. Panic overwhelmed her as she realized there was no escape. "No," she whimpered, clutching the oars tightly. "Please, no." The last thing she saw before the water swallowed her whole was the silhouette of the lighthouse, standing tall and indifferent against the horizon. Its beams swept across the waves, illuminating the countless bodies floating just beneath the surface. Faces frozen in eternal terror, their mouths open in silent screams. And somewhere, deep within the abyss, the whispers resumed. Blackwater Cove remained unchanged the next morning. The sun rose, casting golden light over the tranquil waters. To any outsider, it appeared to be just another picturesque seaside town. But the locals knew better. They always would. For Blackwater Cove kept its secrets well, and its hunger eternal. Emma's disappearance became another unsolved mystery in the town's long history of vanishings. Weeks passed, and life in Blackwater Cove continued as usual. The tourists who occasionally wandered into town were met with the same evasive answers when they asked about the eerie atmosphere or the legends surrounding the cove. Locals shrugged, claiming ignorance, but their eyes betrayed a deep-seated fear. Some even claimed to hear Emma's voice among the whispers that echoed along the shoreline at night, a desperate plea for help that no one could answer. Among the townsfolk, rumors spread about the cursed lighthouse. Some said it was built on sacred ground, desecrated long ago by sailors seeking fortune. Others believed it housed a portal to another realm, one inhabited by malevolent entities eager to drag unsuspecting souls into their domain. Few dared approach the structure after dark, and those who did never returned. One stormy evening, a young boy named Caleb ventured too close to the lighthouse while playing hide-and-seek with his friends. Drawn by an inexplicable curiosity, he climbed the spiral staircase to the top, ignoring the ominous creaks and groans of the decaying wood beneath his feet. Inside the keeper's quarters, he found the same journal Emma had discovered weeks earlier. But unlike her, Caleb flipped to the very last page, where a single sentence had been hastily scribbled in blood-red ink. To break the curse, burn the map. Caleb didn't understand what it meant, but he instinctively knew it was important. Clutching the journal to his chest, he fled the lighthouse just as lightning illuminated the sky, revealing shadowy figures gathering on the cliffs below. He ran home and showed the journal to his grandfather, an elderly fisherman who had spent his entire life avoiding the waters near Blackwater Cove. The old man's face paled as he read the message. Without explanation, he gathered dry wood and matches, built a bonfire on the beach, and tossed the journal into the flames. As the fire consumed the pages, a deafening roar erupted from the ocean. Waves surged violently, crashing against the shore with unnatural force. The wind howled and the ground trembled as if the earth itself were splitting apart. When the chaos subsided, the townspeople emerged from their homes to find the lighthouse reduced to rubble. The sea was calm once more, its surface reflecting the first rays of dawn. For the first time in generations, the air felt lighter, freer. The oppressive weight that had hung over Blackwater Cove for centuries had lifted, but the relief was short-lived. Days later, divers exploring the wreckage of the lighthouse discovered something horrifying buried in the sand. An enormous stone altar covered in ancient runes. At its center lay a glass orb containing what appeared to be seawater, swirling with tiny flecks of gold. No one touched it, but everyone felt its pull, a magnetic force that whispered promises of power and destruction. Word of the discovery spread quickly, drawing outsiders eager to exploit the artifact. Among them was a wealthy collector named Victor Kane, who arrived in Blackwater Cove with a team of hired mercenaries. Ignoring the warnings of the locals, he retrieved the orb and transported it to his private estate miles away. That night, the whispers returned, not only to Blackwater Cove, but to every corner of the world. Victor soon realized his mistake. The orb was alive, feeding on fear and despair. It began corrupting those around him, turning them into vessels for the same shadowy entities that had haunted the cove. Desperate to undo the damage, Victor consulted occult experts, historians, and mystics, but none could decipher the runes etched into the altar. In the end, he resorted to drastic measures, smashing the orb with a hammer. The resulting explosion leveled his estate, killing everyone inside. Yet the curse endured, spreading like wildfire across continents. Reports poured in of strange phenomena, disappearances, mass hallucinations, entire villages vanishing overnight. The world teetered on the brink of collapse, gripped by paranoia and madness. Back in Blackwater Cove, the remaining residents braced themselves for the worst. They fortified their homes, prayed to forgotten gods, and prepared to fight whatever horrors the orb's destruction had unleashed. But deep down, they knew the truth. The curse was born of greed and hubris, and only sacrifice could contain it. On the eve of the winter solstice, a group of volunteers gathered on the beach, armed with torches and determination. Led by Caleb's grandfather, they recited an incantation passed down through generations, calling upon the spirits of the sea to reclaim what had been stolen. As the ritual reached its climax, the ocean responded. Waves surged high into the sky, forming a colossal vortex that sucked everything nearby into its depths. When the water settled, the volunteers were gone. So too was the altar, the orb, and any trace of the curse. Blackwater Cove stood silent, its secrets buried once more beneath the waves. Years passed and the town slowly rebuilt itself. New families moved in, unaware of the horrors that had transpired. Life returned to normal, or so it seemed. On quiet nights when the tide was low and the moon hung full in the sky, the whispers could still be heard. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. And so the cycle continued, waiting for the next curious soul to unravel the deadly secret of Blackwater Cove.